Well, good afternoon, early morning, or late evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. Looks like the transition from across the pond here to the east coast of the formerly United States was successful. I'm Gary Hendershot, and I'm running the production now from my secret underground bunker just 12 miles south of the New World Odor. And now, for your listening enjoyment, I'd like to introduce Life Game, www.lifegame.com, www.accutone.com. We have Dr. Dean Lloyd and Am Rosen coming in now. And guys, I think you're live. Take it away.
All right. Thank you, Gary. And hi, everybody. A very happy New Year to you. We're starting another cycle around the sun. Of course, we're always going around our sun, but we kind of like to mark the end of one period and the promise of a new one. So let's get this cycle going. Now, in listening to some of the brilliant discussions that were going on before us, a lot of valid and absolutely necessary information being put forth. But one of the things I want to call your attention to is that, yes, this stuff has to be brought out. You have to understand it. It has to be dealt with. But when you fight something, you're attached to it. We want to handle the imbalances we've created with one hand, so to speak, and we want to move ahead into what works with the other. And we want to strike a balance, not being too attached to either one. In other words, we're either going where we want to go, which is solution-oriented, or we're getting rid of what impedes our forward progress. And, you know, there's a lot of, it's kind of a war zone that's been going on. So let me, before we get into some solutions, let me pinpoint war. Whether it's from our most primitive beginnings, this war thing has been going on, right up till now, where everybody's in vying for control. War is essentially aggressively forcing your will over and against the will of another person. And you get into a thesis-antithesis situation. My thesis is this is the correct way to be. Well, my antithesis is no, that it's not. Well, what's your thesis? My thesis is the antithesis of what you're doing, but that keeps you locked into a perpetual cycle. The basis of all war on this planet, all war, since it first began, is in the human species, in our species, is the battle between the conscious intellectual level of the self-conscious development and the subconscious, what that's called the subconscious, the feeling response level. Now, obviously, in our brilliance, we have created some amazing things, or we wouldn't be able to have this kind of a dialogue, so to speak, or this kind of conversation right now. But in doing so, we've swept a lot of things under the rug of short-sighted, expedient compromises. You might say that human society, has got itself locked in its own death grip. The things that we've created which facilitate mass distribution and make a lot of our modern lifestyle possible have been done so short-sightedly that we've accumulated a lot of toxins and stuff that is threatening the very nature of our existence. In other words, it's self-defeating. And you might say, well, how can we allow ourselves to do this? I mean, the guys in the corporate elite positions, they have family, don't they care? And this is what is not understood, that no matter how brilliant you are, no matter how much you can marshal your will and create something, discipline yourself to a particular way of looking at things, when you let go of that, what is dominating right now, and it has to end, humanity has to finally come of age, is the irrational, illogical, and unreasonable aspects of the feeling level. You wouldn't consciously choose to torment yourself with fear, doubt, confusion, anxiety, guilt, and shame. They are counterproductive. They not only obscure your awareness, derail it, but they also hurt your body, gut emotions. But you do it to yourselves. We all do, to some degree, until we learn how not to. And because you wouldn't consciously choose to do that, but you are doing it to yourself, then you have an irrational part of your awareness fighting against your conscious reason, desire, and better judgment. What you do to yourself, regardless of good intentions, no matter who you are, no matter whether you're on the top of the food chain or on the bottom, if you can do it to yourself, if you can live in any form of denial, guilt-laced insecurity, inadequacy, you can do it to others. And this is pretty much what's been going on. This is why people can justify anything, because regardless of the logic, when the feelings take over, the only value judgment is, do I get what I feel I should have? Whatever the patterning, conditioning, and programming is. Now, obviously, we're dealing with a split, divided psyche, and we'd like to go past that. And what is going past that? First of all, let me remind you that all change is immediate. When you go through a change, you go through a change. Everything else is you just preparing to finally allow yourself to go through a change. But even if you do go through a change, you expand your range of access, of motion, of awareness, you're still coming into it with the old drag lines. So what we want to talk about is what we call it lifestyle designing. And, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, what does that mean? What are these inalienable rights? And just because they may be there, are you accessing them? There's a lot of talk about people being programmed. Well, a lot of the research that's done is based on the way humans have been operating emotionally, psychologically. You can measure the responses. Behaviorists do this on a very primitive level. But suppose all these aspects of your psyche are no longer subconscious and automatic. Suppose you can rewire them according to what makes sense to you. How they interact with your physiology, to enhance your physiology, how they interact with your mind. You stop being pushed around. You're no longer susceptible. There must be host receptivity before any parasite can take hold, whether it's a biological parasite or a mental parasite or an electronic parasite. Suppose we change the nature of the game. After World War I, France built a big defensive fortified line to keep Germany from ever invading again. You come at us now, we're ready for you. But the technology increased. So instead of fighting the line, they just went above and around it. Well, instead of fighting what seems to exist right now, how about we do a psychological upgrade for humanity? How about, and this is all available to you, this is all not just imaginary. I can give you a chapter and verse. Of course, we don't have time to do that here. But what are we trying to achieve as a species? And how do we need to change? What do we need to become in order to achieve the kind of dynamic, socially dynamic level of awareness that we've all been longing for, dreaming of, since we first thought, gee, I don't want to be oppressed. I don't want to be in scarcity. I want abundance. I want to be able to play. I want these pleasure circuits I occasionally experience. I want to expand them. I want to take in more. How do we do that? And how do we add that into the mix of what exists? As I said at the beginning, you have to handle what's there with one hand, and it's a mess, people. It's some brilliant stuff, beautiful stuff, but it's a mess. And how do we forge ahead into a new quality of human interaction that will finally not get rid of what is, but put it into balance, overarch it, and bring it into fine focus so we can all exist at our peak, and that includes deep relaxation. All right, much more to say, but Dean, I know you want to jump in, my friend. Where are you?
I'm right here, Em. Good to hear your voice again, my friend.
Back at you always.
Thank you, thank you. On the lifestyle designing topic, which we're calling today, we look at the new year, and I look at the beginning of this new year and all the resolutions, which are an I agree to do this or contract line we tell ourselves and others that our new and improved self is just around the corner. and in them are moving around into the future. We're moving into our future existence. How does that look to us? I'd like to point out a few reasons why we want to open the way for improvements in our current state. After all, we are moving there anyway. And what is the need for an upgrade? What is needed? More energy, a sweeter, more beautiful sunrise or sunset. We have to acknowledge what is in the way before anything can be dealt with. And most of the resolutions I typically hear every year are lose weight or make more money. I'm going to clean the garage finally, or I'm going to stop smoking or stop exercising, so on. These are places where we can have improvement. But as Am was talking about before, he was making the point that the only right or wrong is what we feel we should have. In other words, trying to get what we want. How do we reevaluate what it is that we're getting as being an adequate or appropriate way of operating from? So in that place, I'd like to acknowledge the people that have made resolutions and stuck with it as saying, good for you. If they're a good resolution. It's hard for me to think of somebody that says, "Oh, I'm going to make a resolutions to drink more alcohol this year." That's going backwards, obviously. But what Am is talking about here is that we have an old pattern of defeating ourselves. In other words, if we cannot achieve what we perceive ourselves to be successful, what is it that's causing us to beat up on ourselves and pick on ourselves when all that's going on or whatever that's happening around us? Are we causing these problems to come to us, that we're not getting enough to eat, or we're not satisfying basic needs? Or what about satisfying our true desires? What are they? Are they being in a successful, intimate, loving relationship? Are they pieces of our creative process, our art forms? Maybe it's music, maybe it's painting, whatever it is to explore. Those places of achieving satisfaction, there's a lot of complaining, and I don't mean that in a critical way. What I'm saying is that when people don't feel they're confident enough to achieve what they want, they complain. And I'd like us to evaluate what it is that we are doing that's causing us to get sucked in by where the problems are. And Am would be, perfectly positioned right now to jump in. So please do.
Thank you, Dean. Well, first of all, I've spent a lifetime, my entire life, dedicated to understanding human consciousness. And I've done a pretty good job. I can give you a chapter and verse. You'll find that it applies to everything. But part of what I discovered, I wanted to find ways to free the human nervous system. And it occurred to me, it was about 1981, when I finally realized what feelings were, how they process through the human nervous system, and how they interrelate both with the intellect, states beyond the intellect, and most specifically with the physiology. Now, as long as these feeling levels are locked into place, that they're going to dominate. Yes, you can get it together, you can think straight, you can discipline yourself, but if you get too tired, too frustrated, too angry, too lonely, too horny, too something, to where you're thrown off kilter, then where do you go? You revert back to the feeling patterns that are basically dominating you. Well, I realized in looking at human development from the embryonic stage on up, and as the nervous system matriculates, where these things come online. I found what I call 3 neurological junctures, where the nervous system is expanding into a whole new range of motion, and they've been mishandled since the beginning of our species. But all healing, physical, emotional, mental, is a process of becoming conscious. When you're actually conscious of the circuitry, you have access and you can rearrange it at will. When you're not conscious, then it controls you. It starts to rearrange you. So breaking the grip, making your feelings, your ability to respond to stimulus, bringing it back under the control of your conscious mind so that you can rearrange it and keep rearranging it till you find a comfortable level for your dynamic. Breaking the grip of the feeling body is imperative. With that, there are certain psychological tools that I've developed for people. Then they can be used without breaking the grip, but they're much more effective when you do. But one of them says you learn to make the best state of mind which you have ever known the very least that you accept. It doesn't become a ceiling to be aspired to, it becomes integrated as a bottom line. For instance, everybody has experiences of feeling really mentally acute. Some days your mind is sharp, you can interrelate, you almost feel like a computer. You've had moments when you feel really vital. You're just on, you feel full of energy. You've had moments when you feel like you're dripping with sexual energy. You've had moments when you're so at ease within yourself that nothing can bother you. We tend to confuse the state of mind we've accessed through whatever technique or method or orientation. We confuse that state of mind with how we seem to get there. And wanting to access it again because it's more pleasurable, it's more expansive, we kind of make up little rituals about it. We're trying to create a way of locking it in. The ironic thing is that the more we try to make it happen, the more we push ourselves away from it. But if you had learned, if you had opened up your feeling body to where you could change your response patterns, when you were thrown off kilter, you'd get sucked into the old ones. You went to the new ones, the refurbished ones, and you change them anytime you get better information. If you could do that, then in terms of your interactions with other people, with situations, well, the least you want to accept at any given moment is the best state of mind you've known. So in whatever form it takes, that can be adaptive. It should be adaptive. But we're talking about a vibrancy of realization. Now, you have some states of mind going on with your body. We may think wonderful thoughts about heaven, peace, love, but in our frustration, our insecurities, we are sending messages to the body that viscerally predispose tissue disposition. They create susceptibility to a lot of things that we're already fighting. When you can take control of those circuits, you can not only ward them off, but you can start to work with the body consciously. You see, the body doesn't know how to change in and of itself. When you domesticate the animal, you need to realize when you're taking these substances, what's being affected? What can I do with them? You have to tell the body and help it to understand. Some thoughts, Dean, please. Jump in.
Thank you, Em. I was talking to a vet just a couple days ago. He's going to be on our show. And by the way, our show is Evolving the Species on the Genesis Communications Network. And that is on every second and fourth Friday on GCN Live, gcn.com. And this Evolving the Species, we have a roundtable discussion that covers what Em is talking about, what I am talking about, and we bring in several different disciplines. I haven't been speaking too much about this on previous United We Strikes, but I think it's time that we let the audience know that we have this available to them, to our listeners, because what we do is we give insight in new ways of thinking, new ways of approaching the health piece, but bringing it around to being aware of what you're doing and why. For example, we did one on biological dentistry and the relationship of hormones. We did another show on just recently on where to find nutrition in the least expected places. Or we did another show on degenerative diseases and show on cancer. Unlike any cancer discussion you've probably ever heard, we are we're the cutting edge of the cutting edge as far as health professionals go, and we want to get questions from you. And this show that I was talking about that is coming up on veterinary medicine is our relationship to animals. And what Ann is talking about is how are we perceiving ourselves in a dysfunctional place? In other words, how is it that we are getting stuck? And what the vet said to me was something that resonated true, because it was very simple. He said, whenever you force an animal into a place, they'll eventually break their trust with you. They'll eventually, try to find a way that they can get out of the situation they're in somehow, some way. And hence the name, breaking in a horse. You don't make a horse. The way he's perceiving it is allowing the horse, working with the horse. This is the natural order of things. And there's whisperers, or there's animal people that are training, the horses and dogs and our wonderful creatures in a way that's new. It's insight. It's allowing rather than forcing. And we want to present that piece. It's a very vital piece right now to the concepts that are being brought up. Some very wonderful insight to the previous speakers, and I commend them for. I just love them to join us so that we can all have our discussion at the round table that's coming up in a few hours. So, Ann, please pick up.
Yes, well said. And also we do a monthly show on Wolf Spirit Radio where we try to really describe some of the things we're just mentioning briefly. They're archived, and they're by title and subject matter on our websites and of course on Wolf Spirit Radio. The thing is, we, almost 2.5 centuries ago, the idea of liberty, the idea of self-reliance, the idea of democracy, of participation of the people, by the people, and for the people was introduced after thousands of generations of being that you didn't have a say. Here's your place and this is how you have to be. But the tendencies that created that are still in operation. And just because we've taken off in that direction doesn't mean we've resolved the needs that allow us to fully operate at that level. But most of the time we're trying to keep back people who want to tell us what to do and override us, and in their short-sighted expediency feel that other people are disposable. Again, feelings when they govern your choices. There you are, you have 5 PhDs, but when it comes to your decisions, the feelings say, I have to exist. That's the base level. And what needs to exist is my sense of self. We call it the ego. It's your self-image. It's a composite for most people of only the first 3 levels. There's more to it than that. But when that happens, anything can be justified, and just about anything has been. But there's a whole new range of motion. People have, in various cultures, at various points of history, have touched upon it, sometimes brilliantly exemplified it, brought it to people as a new range of motion, a new form of access, but in accordance with the times, accordance with their cultural orientation, what people could hear, what they needed. All right. It is time to demystify the mystical. These are biofeedback systems. What they do is show you there is access to parts of the psyche. When you stop wasting your time trying to constantly keep at bay negative feelings that you have and that other systems play off of, because it's easier to sell you stuff when you feel insecure, harder to sell you stuff when you feel really good about yourself. When your body is under your control, then you start to move into what some of these more expanded states. They're just part of the human legacy, but not ricochet in and out of them. Wow, for a moment I saw this and I took this and I did that. Wonderful. All techniques, whether you're using a drug, whether you're using meditation, are focus and concentration. We're bringing various levels of perception in different ways to interact to give us access. It's time to understand these things because there is a whole new range of motion, what has been called the heights of human aspiration, exemplified by some wonderful, brilliant, God-loving personalities, have that's the bottom line, people. That's
Hey,
not what
guys,
we should be aiming for.
We're coming up on just a minute left, and I want to make sure you get that blatant self-promotion done. And by the way, I'm sorry about the background noise. That was my fault. I had an open mic I didn't realize.
I appreciate that, Gary. I know what a gentleman you are, sir. I just want to say, again, a happy new year, this new cycle, much to share. There's many good people that really are interested in what's going on. You can find some of my information on www.lifegame.com, some sample excerpts from my 2 most recent books, and wishing you all the best. Hope it's a great new year for all of us. Dean?
Thank you, Am, and thank you, Gary. The website for myself is www.acutone.com. You'll find our shows, our archive there. We do take out the commercials in the YouTube, so you can share with your friends and you can listen to them and share them. Like I said, we have a number of different topics. The Wolf Spirit Radio and Genesis Communications Network, and of course, the wonderful people here at United We Strike. And I just want to give you, for what it's worth, encouragement for all those people that are making resolutions that are meaningful and that improve their quality of life and sharing their successes with others. And we want questions. Please show us what you're made of. Let's hear what you've got. So please send us emails on our shows, whatever questions that we happen to be covering topics on. Send it to us and we'll bring it up in the show, and we'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
All righty. On that note, I got to take us out, guys. We've already eaten up 30 seconds of the next programming.